You gather here today to listen, perhaps with an expectation, perhaps with an anxiety. When we speak of the man who needs nothing, we are not speaking of some eccentric hermit, nor merely of one who has renounced possessions. We are speaking of a condition of soul, a radical orientation toward existence that disturbs the very foundations upon which society rests. For most of you, life is sustained by an invisible contract. You need recognition, you need belonging, you need food, comfort, security, the applause of your peers, the warmth of love, the intoxication of success. To need is to be woven into the web of the collective. To not need, at least in the ordinary sense, is to step outside of the web, and such a figure becomes, in the eyes of society, the greatest danger, for he mirrors the possibility of freedom, and freedom unsettles all those who remain bound. Let us understand this psychologically. To need is not only a biological condition, but a psychic contract. We are born helpless, and our earliest cry is a confession of need. The mother's breast, the father's protection, the family's approval. These shape the architecture of our developing self. To renounce need is to renounce this architecture, and thus society feels betrayed. For society itself is erected upon layers of mutual need, codified into law, tradition, economy, religion. The one who steps outside, who does not bow to these compulsions, becomes an outsider, an outlaw in the symbolic sense, a threat to the collective order. Such was the Christ figure in his own time. Such was Socrates. Such are the mystics and prophets who erupt from the unconscious with a word that dismantles the fragile edifice of conformity. But why do I say that the man who needs nothing is dangerous? Because society depends on your needs to manipulate you. Observe carefully. Your need for recognition is exploited by hierarchies. Your need for love is exploited by cultural prescriptions. Your need for security is exploited by politics and commerce. The man who does not need these currencies cannot be bought, cannot be blackmailed, cannot be seduced by promises. He becomes free, and freedom, in the psychological sense, is the eruption of the self beyond the grasp of the persona. Society fears such freedom because it threatens to expose the emptiness of its idols. When you see a man who is inwardly free, you suddenly perceive the prison you inhabit. That revelation can inspire, but it can also terrify. You must not mistake this state for indifference or nihilism. The man who needs nothing is not apathetic. He is not a corpse walking in daylight. Rather, he is filled with a fire that does not burn with the fuel of external affirmation. His energy arises from a union with the depths, with what I have called the self, the archetypal center of the psyche in dreams. This figure often appears as the sage, the hermit, the king who has relinquished his crown, or the beggar who carries treasure in rags. In the myth, he is the stranger who wanders without home, yet radiates an authority that unsettles rulers. This is an archetype, the one who is whole unto himself. He is whole, not because he has acquired everything, but because he has relinquished the illusion that wholeness comes from acquisition. Let you descend deeper. You live, most of you, with a secret wound. The wound of dependency. You depend on the gaze of the other to confirm your existence. You depend on the applause to silence your inner doubt. You depend on possessions to distract you from the hollowness within. But when you dream, when the unconscious whispers, you encounter figures who strip you bare, who tear away the masks, who show you that you are more than what you cling to. These dreams terrify because they announce the coming of the man who needs nothing within you. And so you resist, you cling harder to the structures of society, you cling to ideology, you cling to the tribe. Yet still, the archetype emerges, pressing you toward individuation, toward the realization that the true self is self-sufficient, radiant, inexhaustible. Now imagine the collective encountering such a man. He cannot be bribed, for he does not hunger for your coins. He cannot be silenced, for he does not crave your approval. He cannot be enslaved, for he does not fear exile. Such a figure is society's nightmare. And yet, paradoxically, he is also its salvation. For only when one among you embodies this wholeness does the possibility of freedom open for all. The man who needs nothing reveals that you too could be free if only you dare to confront your shadow, to wrestle with the darkness, to endure the death of your false self. And so he inspires, but he also unsettles. The crowd often kills its prophets, for it cannot bear the mirror they hold up. Consider the symbolism of the desert. Again and again, myths and scriptures speak of the desert wanderer, the one who leaves behind the comforts of civilization. The desert is not merely a geographical space, it is the psychic wasteland where all needs are stripped bare. There, the man who thought he could not survive without bread discovers that he can live from a deeper source. There, the one who thought he needed applause discovers silence. And in that silence, he finds the voice of eternity. The desert is the crucible of the one who needs nothing. And when he returns from it, he is unrecognizable to the crowd, for his eyes no longer reflect their projections. He sees through them. He is no longer theirs. But do not romanticize this path. To need nothing is not an achievement you can pursue like a career. It is not a badge of honor, nor a spiritual possession. If you pursue it as a goal, you will only entangle yourself further in need, the need to be seen as holy, the need to be admired as free. The paradox is that only by confronting your deepest needs, by descending into the hell of your dependencies, by wrestling with the demons of hunger, loneliness, fear, do you arrive at the place where need dissolves. It is a death, and few are willing to die before they die. Most will cling, and society encourage this clinging, for society is terrified of the truly free. Think of the archetype of the trickster. He exposes the hypocrisies of kings and priests not by violent rebellion, but by showing that he does not need their authority. He laughs at their decrees because he stands outside of their game. This is why the fool in the medieval court was the most dangerous figure. He needed no crown, and therefore his tongue was sharper than any sword. So too the man who needs nothing undermines every system simply by existing. He is proof that your needs are chains woven by fear. He reveals that the collective rests on illusions that dissolve when confronted by the one who cannot be coerced. And yet, let us be honest, most of you do not wish to be this man. You may admire him, you may quote him, you may place him on a pedestal, but you secretly fear his fate. For such men are exiled, mocked, crucified, or forgotten. Society does not reward those who need nothing. It rewards those who play the game well. And you long for reward. You long to belong. To walk the path of the one who needs nothing is to walk alone. It is to endure the silence where your name is not praised. It is to embrace the void where all illusions fall away. That is why I say he is both the greatest threat and the greatest gift. He threatens everything you cling to, but he also offers the only real liberation. You see, the danger is not that such a man destroys society, but that he exposes it. He shows that the emperor has no clothes, that the temple is empty, that the marketplace sells only shadows. This exposure is unbearable to those who identify with the illusions, and so they call him a heretic, a madman, a nihilist. But he is none of these. He is simply free. And freedom is always heresy to those who worship chains. I tell you, you must encounter this figure within yourself. He is not only an external prophet or sage, he is the archetype of wholeness within your own psyche. When you dream of the beggar who radiates light, when you see the stranger in your visions who asks you to leave everything behind, you are meeting him. Do not turn away, for though he terrifies you, he is the threshold to your own individuation. To need nothing is to discover that you are rooted in eternity, that your being does not depend on the applause or rejection of the crowd. This is the self, the immortal core, and once you taste it, you cannot return to the slavery of need. You may ask, how does one come to this state of not needing? Is it by sheer will, by ascetic discipline, by deliberate withdrawal? No. These are only surface gestures. The true transformation is deeper, more terrible, more beautiful. It occurs when the unconscious takes hold of you, when the shadow presses so close that you can no longer escape into the trivial consolations of society. A dream comes, perhaps, in which everything you have clung to collapses, your house burns down, your loved ones turn away, your gold turns to dust. In such a dream you awaken with dread, yet beneath the dread there is something luminous, for the psyche is saying, you are more than this. What you thought you needed was only a mask, a scaffolding. Now you are naked before eternity. This nakedness is the beginning of freedom, but this freedom is ambiguous. To the ego, it feels like annihilation. To the collective, it looks like madness. That is why prophets are so often mistaken for lunatics. Society asks, how can one live without the currency of needs? And the ego asks, how can I survive if my familiar attachments dissolve? And yet, the deeper psyche whispers, you are rooted in something more profound than need. You are rooted in being itself, in the self that precedes and transcends every hunger. To realize this is to become a threat, not because you wish to destroy, but because you embody a truth that others have not dared to face. Consider the archetype of the king who abdicates his throne. In fairy tales and myths, such a figure does not become diminished. On the contrary, when he casts aside the crown, he reveals a deeper sovereignty, for the crown is only a symbol of borrowed power, propped up by the needs of the subjects, but the true sovereign is the one who carries authority within, independent of outward recognition. When he steps down, he becomes more than a king. He becomes an image of the self, radiant and whole. And society trembles because it realizes that its symbols of power are pale imitations of the inner reality. This is why the saints often appeared in rags, why the wandering monk or hermit unsettled emperors more than armies. They could not be bribed or threatened, and so they revealed the impotence of worldly power. A man who needs nothing has discovered the inexhaustible fountain within, and once he drinks from it, all the wells of society taste of dust. He is no longer dependent. He is no longer ensnared. He stands free, and freedom is unbearable to those who remain enslaved by their own desires. I tell you, such freedom does not come cheaply. It is born in fire, in solitude, in confrontation with the abyss. It is not a casual choice. Like one who decides to live simply, it is a radical rebirth, a death and resurrection within the psyche. Dreams will drag you down into the underworld, where all your needs appear as demons. They will mock you. They will terrify you. They will cling to you with desperate hands. If you resist, you will be torn apart. But if you endure, if you allow the fire to consume your illusions, then something eternal awakens in you. The self rises, luminous, whole, beyond need, and you return to the world changed, marked with the light that others recognize and fear. Do you understand now why society brands such a man dangerous? For every system of power depends on your needs. Politics thrives because you fear insecurity. Religion, when corrupted, thrives because you fear meaninglessness. Commerce thrives because you hunger for possessions. Social order thrives because you need belonging. If one among you rises and says, "I need nothing," the whole edifice trembles, for he has revealed that these powers have no hold except through your fear. He is like a mirror held up to the world, showing that the emperor wears no clothes, and that mirror cannot be tolerated. Yet, do not misunderstand me. The man who needs nothing is not against society. He does not rise as a destroyer. He is simply beyond it. He may still participate. He may still eat, work, speak, laugh, but he does so without chains. He is like one who plays a game, but does not believe the rules are ultimate. And this lightness, this detachment, is what makes him dangerous. For if enough men and women embody it, the collective contracts lose their power. The rulers tremble because they cannot command free souls. The marketplace falters because it cannot sell to those who are whole. The temples collapse because they cannot frighten those who have seen the God within. That is the threat, and that is the promise. I want you to see that this figure is also within you, in your dreams, in your moments of silence, in the strange call you sometimes hear when the world grows too noisy. This is the man who needs nothing. Calling from the depths of your own psyche, he does not ask you to renounce life, but to awaken to the truth that life cannot be bargained for. It does not demand poverty, but freedom from enslavement. He does not despise love, but refuses to make love a chain. He is the one who loves because he is whole, not because he is empty. He gives not out of hunger, but out of abundance, and this to terrifies society, because it exposes that most of your giving is bargaining. Most of your love is need disguised as devotion. Think of the shadow that society casts upon such a man. They will call him arrogant. Because he does not bow, they will call him dangerous. Because he cannot be controlled, they will call him inhuman. Because he does not play their games, and yet, in secret, they envy him, for he embodies what they have buried within themselves. Each of you, if you look honestly, can sense this figure waiting in your depths. He appears in dreams as a wanderer, a beggar, a wise old man, a solitary star, shining in the night. He beckons you to shed your masks, to let the what must be, to awaken into freedom. Few answer, but those who do become luminous, and their light cannot be hidden. Now let us explore the paradox more deeply. To need nothing is not to be without relationship. On the contrary, the man who needs nothing can finally enter into true relationship because he no longer grasps. He does not seek to consume the other, nor to use the other to fill a void. He meets the other as whole, meets whole. As self meets self. This is the highest form of love, for it is not entangled in fear or dependency, but such love is rare, and society scarcely understands it. Most relationships are unconscious contracts of mutual need. And so, when a man or woman enters the world without need, they confound these contracts, they love freely, and that love feels both intoxicating and terrifying, for it cannot be possessed. This is why, in myths, such figures are often persecuted. The one who needs nothing is accused of threatening the order because he embodies a love and freedom that dissolves the old bonds. He becomes a catalyst for transformation, but transformation is always resisted. The collective wants stability, not freedom. The collective wants obedience, not wholeness. And so it rejects its prophets, only to revere them after death. When their threat has passed, the crucified Christ becomes the foundation of the church only after he has been silenced. The executed Socrates becomes the model of philosophy only after his voice has been stopped. The pattern repeats because society cannot tolerate freedom in the living, only in the dead. I urge you, do not wait for death to revere this figure. Recognize him in yourself now. He is your shadow, your hidden wholeness, your secret strength. You will resist him because he threatens all you cling to. But if you dare to let go, you will find that you are not diminished, but expanded. To need nothing is to discover that everything belongs to you, not in possession, but in essence, the whole world becomes your home, because you are no longer bound to one corner of it. The whole of humanity becomes your kin, because you are no longer trapped in tribal boundaries. The whole of life becomes your teacher, because you are no longer enslaved to one system of meaning. This is the gift, and this is the danger. There is a hidden terror in the collective when it glimpses the man who needs nothing. This terror is not simply intellectual, it is visceral, archetypal, for deep within the psyche of every individual lives. The infant who once depended absolutely, who cried for the breast, who clung to the parent's hand, as though life itself would vanish without it. To see one who needs nothing awakens the memory of that helplessness, and it feels like abandonment, like the cold void. The unconscious equates freedom with death because it cannot imagine existence outside the network of need, and so society, which is built on the architecture of dependency, reacts with fear and hostility toward the one who embodies the self beyond all need. In dreams, this fear often takes the form of pursuit. Perhaps you dream that you are being chased by a stranger who walks calmly while you run frantically. The more you flee, the more his presence fills the air, until you realize he's not outside you but within. That dream figure is the man who needs nothing. He does not pursue you to destroy you, but to claim you. Yet the ego flees, for it feels its own extinction in his gaze. If you turn toward him, if you dare to meet his eyes, you discover that what you feared as death is a deeper birth. But this requires the courage to face the annihilation of the false self. Few dare it, and so most flee until death itself overtakes them. The archetype of death and rebirth is woven into every myth because it reflects this psychic process. Osiris is dismembered and reassembled. Christ descends into the tomb and rises. The shaman is torn apart in visions before he returns with healing power. These stories are not about physical death, but about the death of need, the death of dependency, the death of the ego's illusions. Only when the false self dies can the true self emerge, luminous and free. The man who needs nothing is not one who has escaped life, but one who has passed through death while still alive. He has tasted the void and discovered that he is not annihilated, but rooted in something eternal. Society cannot bear this truth because it undermines its power. Every empire, every system of control is built upon fear, fear of hunger, fear of rejection, fear of punishment, fear of exile. If you no longer fear, you cannot be ruled. If you no longer hunger, you cannot be bought. If you no longer crave applause, you cannot be manipulated. The man who needs nothing is a living revelation that fear is a phantom, that the chains of society are woven from shadows, and once you see that, you cannot unsee it. That is why such figures are silenced, exiled, crucified. They do not wield weapons, yet they topple thrones. Their power is psychological, archetypal, and no sword can cut it down. Do you see? Then the paradox, the greatest threat is also the greatest healer, for the man who needs nothing embodies individuation, the union of the conscious with the unconscious, the realization of the self. He shows you what you could be if you cease clinging to your masks. He is a mirror of your wholeness. Yet because you fear to look, you call him an enemy. In truth, he is your liberator. Society does not know this consciously, but unconsciously it feels it, and that is why it reacts with such violence. The crucifixion of the free soul is society's attempt to silence the truth. It cannot endure. But crucifixions never succeed, for the archetype cannot be killed. It returns again and again. In prophets, mystics, dreamers, in every individual who dares to awaken, the shadow plays a crucial role here. What you repress in yourself, you project onto the man who needs nothing. You call him arrogant because you repress your own sovereignty. You call him dangerous because you repress your own freedom. You call him inhuman because you repress the self within you. Thus society becomes blind to the truth he embodies, but the unconscious is relentless. It sends you dreams, symbols, synchronicities, all pointing to the figure you fear. It whispers, you too are called to this freedom. You too can walk without chains. You too can be whole. And the more you resist, the louder the call becomes, until you either awaken or collapse into bitterness. Let us look at the symbol of the beggar. In many traditions, the beggar is despised by society, yet revered by mystics. Why? Because the beggar embodies the paradox of need and freedom. Outwardly, he has nothing. Inwardly, he may have everything. The one who looks at him with contempt is projecting his own fear of poverty. The one who looks at him with awe senses the archetype of the man who needs nothing. The beggar is a mirror, and how you respond to him reveals your own psychic state. This is why, in dreams, beggars often appear as guides. They strip away your illusions and show you what remains when all possessions fall away. If you can see their light, you are nearing freedom. If you only recoil, you remain bound. The danger of misunderstanding is great. Some believe that to emulate the man who needs nothing is to renounce all possessions, to flee society, to abandon love. But this is a distortion. True freedom is not found in external gestures, but in inner detachment. You may live in a city, you may have a family, you may own property and still embody the freedom of needlessness. What matters is whether you are possessed by these things or whether you hold them lightly. The man who needs nothing is not enslaved by what he has or has not. He participates in the world but is not consumed by it. This is the deeper freedom, and it is accessible to you if you dare to confront your shadow and awaken the self. Do you notice how society ridicules such freedom? It calls it laziness. It calls it irresponsibility. It calls it madness. But these are defenses, projections of its own fear. For if society admitted the truth that you could live without its chains, it would collapse. Its rulers would lose power. Its markets would lose control. Its institutions would lose authority. So it must ridicule, demonize, silence. But ridicule cannot erase the truth. It only reveals the desperation of the collective. The laughter of the crowd at the prophet is the sound of fear disguised as mockery. And yet, beneath the laughter, a seed is planted, and in time it grows. You must ask yourself, are you willing to meet this figure within, or will you continue to flee? The path is not easy. It demands that you face your deepest fears, your darkest shadows, your most desperate hungers. It demands that you endure the void where all illusions die. It demands that you relinquish the comfort of belonging to the herd. But if you endure that, you will find something more precious than all possessions. You will find yourself. You will discover that you are whole, radiant, free. And when you know this, you will no longer be ruled by fear. You will love freely, live freely, give freely. You will be the man, the woman who needs nothing. And society, though it may fear you, will also be transformed by your presence. The question remains, why do you resist the call of the man who needs nothing, even when you know he is the doorway to your freedom? The answer is simple and terrible. You are afraid to lose yourself. To release need is to dissolve the fragile architecture of the ego, and the ego clings to its illusions as though they were life itself. But I tell you that life is a shadow. You do not yet live until you have passed through this death. To awaken as one who needs nothing is to awaken as one who truly lives, rooted not in the borrowed breath of the collective, but in the inexhaustible source of being. This is why mystics glow with an aura that cannot be explained. They have touched eternity within themselves, and eternity shines through their eyes. I have seen in my own work how people tremble when they approach this threshold. They sit before me, speaking of their emptiness, their loneliness, their desperation for approval, their hunger for love. And when I show them the way, the path of confronting the shadow, of entering the silence where no external voice can affirm them, they recoil. They say, "No, I cannot live without these things. I will collapse, I will die." And yet, those who dare, those who endure, those who allow the death of falsehood, they return with eyes that see differently. They return lighter, freer, unbound. They return with a serenity that cannot be purchased, with a joy that cannot be explained. They become dangerous, not because they harm, but because they reveal. Imagine yourself standing on the edge of an abyss. Behind you is the world of needs, the familiar voices calling you back, promising comfort, recognition, belonging. Before you is silence, darkness, nothingness. To step forward feels impossible, yet it is the only way, and when you leap, you do not fall into nothing, you fall into yourself. The abyss was not emptiness, but fullness, not annihilation, but the self, and in that moment, you discover that you were never in danger. The ground of your being was always there, waiting for you to trust it. This is the mystery. You fear nothingness, but nothingness is the womb of eternity. The man who needs nothing has discovered this, and that is why he walks unafraid. But do not think this path is for a chosen few. It calls to every soul, for every soul contains the archetype of wholeness. You may hear it in dreams. You may glimpse it in moments of silence. You may feel it in the strange dissatisfaction that no possession, no praise, no love can fill. That dissatisfaction is the voice of the self calling you to relinquish your chains. Do not silence it with more distractions. Do not numb it with more possessions. Do not bury it beneath applause. Listen, for if you listen, you will hear the footsteps of the man who needs nothing within you. He comes quietly, patiently, but he comes, and if you welcome him, you will never be the same. Society will not understand you if you answer this call. It will mock you. It will resist you. It will try to draw you back into its contracts. You will be tempted to conform again, to pretend that you still need what others need. But you will know the truth. And once you know, you cannot unknow. You will see the chains around others, and you will grieve for them, but you will not put them back on yourself. You will walk in the world as a stranger. And yet, as one deeply at home, you will love without clinging, give without bargaining, speak without fear. You will be free, and freedom is the one thing society cannot manufacture, cannot control, cannot destroy. This freedom is not selfishness. On the contrary, it is the end of selfishness. For the one who needs nothing no longer grasps, no longer devours, no longer enslaves others to fill his own void. He is full, and from his fullness he gives. He becomes a fountain in the desert, a light in the darkness. He threatens society only because society prefers slavery to freedom. But for the individual, he is salvation. To encounter such a person is to feel the possibility of your own liberation, and if you dare to follow, you will discover that the same wholeness resides within you. That is the secret society fears, that freedom is not for a chosen few, but for all who dare. I tell you, the man who needs nothing is not far from you. He is not merely in the deserts of the mystics or the legends of the prophets. He lives in your unconscious, in your dreams, in the whisper that comes when you are quiet enough to hear it. He is the archetype of the self, and he waits for you. One day, when you are tired of chasing shadows, when your hunger has worn you down, when your thirst for approval has left you empty, you will turn inward, and there you will find him, sitting in silence, radiant, too whole. He will not rebuke you, he will not shame you. He will simply look at you with eyes that say, you were always free. You only had to see it. And so I leave you with this. Do not fear the man who needs nothing. Fear rather the endless slavery of your own unexamined needs. For they will consume you, they will exhaust you, they will chain you until death. But if you dare to face them, to let them die, you will awaken into a freedom that no one can take from you. This is the threat and the promise. This is the danger and the gift. This is the mystery that society cannot bear, but that the soul longs for. The man who needs nothing is the mirror of your destiny. Look into that mirror and recognize yourself